to my channel. My name is Bolaji. I love to create content about God, lifestyle, gratitude, and every other thing that tickles my fancy. Returning subscribers, thank you so much for clicking on the link to this video again. And if you're new to the channel, well, we're just a happy family on here. Please do well to subscribe after. Thank you very much. Okay, so this morning, I had a bit of, what did I have, Safe? I had a bit of, I'll tell you what the experience. So I had a bit of experience, and I'm like, well, you know what? Since we did a video last week on how to save towards getting a house, well, we can as well do a follow-up video. Yeah, and that inspired this video. So this video is just gonna be about credit scores, credit history, credit rating, and all of that. So yes, back to me, what happened? Okay, so usually you register with a couple of credit companies like that, so they get to monitor your credit scores and tell you from time to time what it's like, things you can do to improve on it, you should be cautious of, and all of that. So I received a mail from one of them this morning, Credit Karma, and then they said to me, oh yes, I have a new credit score, I should go and view it and all. So I was excited, like, let me go and view the credit score. I was hoping it would have increased or improved, only for me to get there and I saw minus 15. I'm like, what? I was pained, like, credit score that I am guarding jealously, that I am like building, minus 15. What happened? I was pained. So yes, seeing the credit score made me like just reflect on how much I now understand how the credit thingy works. More like when I just arrived, a Nigerian that I am, back home we weren't used to getting things on credit. It's not like you can't get things on credit, but financial advisors have made us to see that it's not advisable to get things on credit, because more like you get paid now and you're all bothered about, oh, you need to refund that money before you can spend what is left, and by the time you spend what is left, it is not enough for the rest of the month, and then you have to probably find someone to borrow you some money again to keep up till you get paid again, and the cycle continues like that. So they usually encourage that you should not get things on credit, and I mean that was the mindset with which I came to the abroad. But after I arrived, I had one of my colleagues who arrived earlier, and then we got talking and all of that. She was telling me about credit cards. I'm like, credit card, like, is it by force to borrow? Please, please, not teach me how to be borrowing and be jegbesi. I'm not doing, like, I wasn't just interested in, well, don't let me say I wasn't interested, but I felt like there should be another way around it and all. But after a couple of months, I got to realize that hell, we have to get into this credit business. You know when they say when you're in Rome you behave like the Romans. So the reality of that dawned on me, and I started looking for a way to get a credit card, and it took a while. It was a bit of a frustrating process, but eventually I got one. But that's not even the story. So the story is more like, or what's interesting to me, is how the credit cards work, how to build your credit history, how to build your credit score. And that's why I'm doing this video, as a way to link it up with my previous video on one of the ways to save towards buying your house in the UK, or towards your retirement if that's what you prefer. In this video I'll be focusing on buying a house, so just link it to the previous video. So another thing you can be doing alongside is building your credit score, building your credit history, being credit worthy. That's another thing that would be considered at the point when you're ready to buy a house and then you need to apply for a mortgage. So literally, how do these credit cards work, and how do I build my credit history? How do I build my credit score? I just arrived in the UK. What do? I have started saving my money in a Lisa account, and I'm saving towards it again. What should I be doing? So the other things you need to do is to also work on building your credit score, having a good credit history. A lot of things are put into consideration when it comes to credit scoring, credit history, and all of that. It's not solely dependent on getting a credit card. Like, that is not the major thing that makes you credit worthy or have a good credit history. It's just one of the many factors. So the other things you need to do is to, number one, enroll on the electoral register. And it's pretty easy to do. You just log on to gov.uk just to register on electoral register, electoral roll. So you fill all of the forms and you enroll yourself. When you are enrolled on the electoral register, it is one factor ticked, and it's going to help your credit score or your credit history. The second thing you need to do is to ensure that you are not moving houses very frequently. More like, they usually say that living in a particular address, a single address, for up to 3 years helps your credit score, helps your credit history. It makes them see that you are reliable and you can easily be traced. You are not moving everywhere, raising questions of why exactly are you moving up and down. We will not borrow you money and then in next 1 year you have already moved and go to another place. So in next 6 months, 1 year is even too much. In the next 3 months, you have moved and you've gone to another place. So usually they say staying in the same address for long periods also helps your credit score. Sometimes you can't help it. I also had to move houses. More like some of us, when we came into the UK, the employers probably got you an address where you stayed for 6 weeks, for 3 months, for 6 months, and then you have to move homes. Yeah, it's understandable. It's not like if you have moved house like this, that's the end. But usually it is advisable that you don't move houses frequently. It's not very good for the credit score. That's the second thing that you need to do. Another thing you need to do is, regarding opening accounts, ensure that you don't have so many accounts opened. More like, for example, bank accounts. If you would open bank accounts, ensure you don't have more than, I think, 2 or 3 within a 3 year period. There's a limit. And if you are opening, ensure that you have at least 6 months apart. More like, if you open a bank account in January, you shouldn't open another one like in a long time. But if at all you do have to, like, ensure there is a 6 months gap between when you open the first one and when you opened the second one. Do you get what I mean? So that also helps. Then how long you keep the bank account open also helps the credit score. So just keep it open, not like you open, you close, you open, you close, you open, you close. It's not good for your credit score. That's another thing that you need to do. What else do you need to do? Yeah, for bills, when you get to pay bills by direct debits, it also helps your credit score. So not like your water bill, your council tax, your, which bills do we pay again? Energy bills. I'm not sure if they put energy bills in consideration for mine. I've not seen it on my credits. On my credits, what's it called, credit reports before. But I know when you pay bills by direct debit, it also helps your credit score. I understand that some people might be living in shared houses and you don't get to pay these bills yourself. When I also moved in, I wasn't paying any bills at all. I lived in a shared house, but I mean, Rome was not built in a day. You don't get in here and it's all sorted. But these are things that help build your credit. Another one is going to be getting a credit card. So getting a credit card is such that some banks would give you credit cards easily, while others would not give you easily. But usually, about after you spend about 3 to 6 months, when you apply to your bank that you would like to get a credit card, you might qualify to get one, depending on your bank. And then there are some banks that they usually have, because I mean, to get a credit card as well, your credit history would be checked. And when your credit history is checked and they see that it's not carrying water, like you that you just arrived 1 month ago, like where are we going to trace you to? So you may not get it as soon as you come into the UK. Whereas some banks also give people as soon as they come into the UK, when they see that, I mean, you came in via the work route, you've got an employer, you might be here long term and all of that, they do give people credit. I know of people that they got their credit cards as soon as they arrived in the UK. So it just differs. But if you do have an opportunity to get a credit card, most especially from your bank, that is like the most reliable source of getting a credit card. There are other sources though, but the most reliable one is most times from your bank, the bank where you bank with. Because I know of someone that was trying to get a credit card from somebody, and then they were telling her she had to first of all spend like more like exhaust the entire credit limit as a one-off spending. And like, what if I don't need this money? Why do I have to spend it? Like, excuse me. So you also have to be wary of who you get your credit card from. So just don't just go because, yeah, I need to get the credit card, and then you just go for one random person or one random company and put yourself in a debt. So it's not necessary, it's not worth it. The fact that we're building our credit score and building our credit history doesn't mean that we should put ourselves in positions we shouldn't put ourselves in. Okay, so now while we're talking about getting a credit card, so let's assume that after about 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 months or a year, you eventually get a credit card. Okay, good. So I think I mentioned earlier that some banks would actually they have provision, or they have like special types of card for people in our category who just arrived in the UK, who probably has no credit history or has a bad credit history. So more like you, so you just do not have a card at all. They have a special type of card that they just use, a credit card. It might be with a low credit limit, but it's a credit card as well. So there are different categories of it and different benefits that each one of them offers, but the basic one is just fine for to build your credit score, to build your credit history. So let's assume that you eventually got a card in your hand. So how it works is such that some people will think that, why would they give me credit card? It's very tricky. More like you find people that they, in the bid to, I want to build my credit score, they get a credit card, and eventually after getting it, they spend it and then you refund it immediately. It is as good as not having a credit card, and it is not going to impact your score in any way. So when they spend it immediately, they'll be like that, but I have a credit card, I spent it, but my credit score is still not improving, my credit score still keeps dropping. What is the problem? The problem is, when you have a credit card, yes, you will still pay it back, but you shouldn't pay it back immediately, because you have a, like, let's say 30-day period of time. You spent it, let's say, on the first. If you pay it back immediately, the credit agencies might have not captured that you spent some money out of that credit card at the time you are paying it back immediately. So, well, let's say on you spent it on the first, you paid it back on the second. Credit agency is coming to check or doing a check on the 15th, and by that 15th comes now, they will just see that 00 that you have spent there, and to them it's like you have not spent it. So if you spend on your credit card, it is important that you don't repay it back immediately. You leave it on there till probably the end of the month, and then you repay it back. That's one way. Or you set a direct debit such that your bank automatically pays off your credit balance at the beginning of every month, or at some point in another month, or something like that, or at some point after your statement has been generated. But do not make the mistake of paying back your credit balance as soon as you use it, because it is as good as you're not using it at all. Another thing you don't want to do with your credit card is not use it at all. It is not good for your credit score as well. So I have a credit card. I eventually got one, but I don't want to check this. I don't want to check this before something will happen. Before something will not happen, and then you decide not to use the credit card. It is not good for your credit score as well. As long as you have it, as long as it is in your name, you are expected to use it. So if you don't use it, it's also going to have a negative impact on your credit score or your credit history. So don't. Okay, what if you now say, my category like this, so I have a credit card, I've been trying to use it, but it's impacting my score badly, so I don't want to use it again, I'll just abandon it. That is also not good for your credit score. It's also not good for your credit history. It's going to impact it negatively. It's as good as not having it at all. In short, it is better not to have it at all than have it and not use it. So now that we know the things we should not do, what are the things that we should do? When you have a credit card, I've told you in the beginning or some minutes earlier, when you have it, you spend on it today. Don't repay it immediately. Leave it up until the end of the month at least, and then you repay it, and then it's going to be back to your credit limits, and then you spend again, and then you leave it for 30 days or thereabouts, you repay it back to your credit limit, and the cycle goes on and on and on like that. So it's actually good for you to have a credit card, and then you do it in that way. So also, when you have a credit limit, when you have a credit card, usually you get the credit limit. For instance, somebody has a credit limit of £500. Yes, you can spend the entire £500, but you should not spend the entire £500. Do you get what I mean? You are expected to spend at least at most, not even at least, at most between 1 and 30%. Some people will say 30, some people will say 25, some people will say 20. But I usually like to stay in the middle, and I'll tell myself I'm not spending more than 25% of my credit limit. So more like you have a credit limit of 500, 25% of 500 is 50. Is it 50? 25% of 500 is 12.5. 125. I think it's 125. Let me check. Okay, so yes, 25% of 500 is 125. So on that credit card, you should not spend more than 125 in a month. That is the meaning. More like you have 500 to spend, but to help your credit score, don't spend more than 125. If you spend more than 125, what the lenders would see, or what the credit agencies see, is that you are living above your means, you cannot be trusted, that kind of thing. It's actually funny. I mean, when I first said, I'm like, why do you have to give me 100% and want me to spend 25? Just give me 25%. I know it's 25% I want to spend. You know, that kind of thing. That's the way it is. So you shouldn't spend more than 25% of your credit limit. If you keep spending more than 25% of your credit limit, it doesn't have a good impact on your credit score. What else? Okay, yes, regarding paying back, which is something that a lot of people are quite weary about, because you hear of people that they have lots of debts on their credit cards and all, which is actually very true, because at the point of applying to get a mortgage, they will usually check and ask if you haven't got any credit balances, and the credit balances includes, you have a credit card, how much gbese do you have on it? That's the meaning. You get what I mean? You get what I mean? Okay, so, and some people have loads of thousands of pounds of debts on their credit cards, which is usually not easy to pay off. But sometimes it's lifestyle that are not paying off as a when due that causes those credits balances to accumulate like that. So what happens? How does it accumulate? This is it. So when you have a credit card and then you have a credit limit, you spend on your credit card, you have two options to pay back. The first one is either you pay the entire thing you've spent, is that you pay it back, or you pay a minimum balance. If you pay a minimum balance, the credit agencies still see it as you are credit worthy. More like they see you are paying something every month, and it's a good sign. Or how much are you paying every month? But let's go back to our previous example. You have a credit limit of 500, you spent 125. You have the option of either paying the entire 125 at the beginning of the next month, or you pay a minimum balance. This minimum balance usually varies. The bank determines it, or whosoever your lender or credit card company is determines it. Some people will tell you that out of that 125, just pay 5%, just pay £5. So when you pay £5 of that 125, it is counted that you are paying something back. Like, they don't want to know how much you are paying, but you are paying something back. But the fact that you've paid only £5 out of the 125 does not mean that the remaining 120 has been written off. The remaining 120 is waiting for you. You will still pay it. But you now begin to pay interest on it at that point when you haven't paid it all. So usually it could be that on that 120 that is left, you pay an interest rate of, let's say, 1.25 on it, which means that by the time you are paying that remaining 120 you have not paid, interest is already going on top of it. Let me talk like a layman. So like the first month goes, you didn't pay back the 120, you already, in short, at the end of the first month of not paying, you are not paying 120 anymore. You are paying plus 1.25 interest rates. You get what I mean? Second month goes again, you've not paid it, and you probably accumulated even some more in the next month, and then another interest keeps piling up, and before you know it, you have a huge credit balance, and it's usually very difficult to pay back. So don't get yourself into the cycle of having not to pay off your credit card, and then you now have a huge balance. Because at the point of, let's say you want to buy a house now, and they do their checks, it's not a good sign that you have a huge balance. So usually when you have a credit card, you spend 125, by the next month pay the entire 125. The next month comes, you spend 120, pay the entire 120. When you pay off your balance at the beginning of every month, or you pay off your balance all the time, you won't accumulate any interest rate at all, any interest at all. You are more like spending what you have used, and doing that you'll be building your credit score as well, and you have a good credit history because you are not missing any payments at all. So those are the basics of having a credit card and building your credit score, building your credit history. So when you do that, it's not like you want to buy a house tomorrow. It's not like you want to buy a house in 6 months and then you begin to do it today. It doesn't work that way. So when you do that, or when you've been doing that for like well over a period of time, a year, 2 or 3, like it's established that you are credit worthy. By the time you apply to get a mortgage, so do you now see why it is important for you to start building your credit history or building your credit score from now? And another thing is, credit score is not the same thing as credit history. You might have a high credit score and not have a credit history. The most important thing to focus on is not the score, but rather the history. So fine, I was bothered that 15 points went off my credit score, but I wasn't really bothered as well, because not really the score that matters, it's the history that carries more water. Because you find people that they arrived in the UK yesterday, and you that you've been here since 3 years ago sef, they have a higher credit score than you. But when the two of you apply to probably get a mortgage or something, they will consider you that has a better credit history, even though you have a lower credit score, than they will consider that person. Do you get what I mean? So literally, it's not a hard thing to do. It's not a difficult thing. It's just a system that you get yourself into. And also, if you are looking at getting a house, you would easily get things on credit. It might impact your credit score at that time when you get it, and then eventually you begin to build it up again and all. But if you can, avoid getting things on credit, because all of these things would eventually make up your credit history. So if you know you are looking at buying a house, don't go and get a car on finance. They will give you the car, you get the car on finance, but by the time you are ready to buy a house, they would consider that you have a car on finance, you have a laptop on finance, you have a phone on finance, you have that one on finance, you have that one on finance, and it might reduce your chances at that time. So usually the advice they usually give people is such that build your credit score, build your credit history for when you would have a big purchase to do, and at that time you know that your chances are high, not that you would have reduced your chances of getting it at that point in time by having loads and loads and loads of finances and finances and finances and finances. There are lots of things to it, but you just keep learning on the job. Is it job now? You keep learning as things goes on. As you get into the system, you realize things by yourself, and keeps getting better really. But those are the basics I have learned about credit scores and credit histories and credit rating in the last couple of years. If you do want any more info, you'd like any more info, Google is there. I mean, just go to Google. You would find loads of things, loads of articles, and loads of experiences of people that you would learn from. So at this point, I think I'll just come to the end of this video. If you found it helpful, do let me know in the comment section. Please do well to like, do well to comment, and do well to subscribe if you haven't. And yes, share with as many people that you think might also benefit from this video. Till you see me again in my next video, I remain your darling Omobeejay. Remain in God, and God bless you. Bye.